Welcome to the next episode of DPDP Decoded. So Nara, in the last episode you spoke about consent. That requires designing consent forms. So what is it? Can you just give us more visibility on that?
Interesting question. The DPDP Act interestingly says predominant amount of your personal data you can process if and only if consent is taken. So what would it mean? So for a fiduciary, I will have to design a form in such a way that I give all the details about how I'm capturing your personal data, how I'm processing it, and this in the law is called as privacy notice. So the privacy notice has to be designed in such a way that all your requirements of personal data and how you're going to be processing is clearly documented. On the other side, the consent is given by the data principal. So just like any contract where there are two parties, while processing personal data, you would still have two parties. Party number one is the fiduciary, and the fiduciary has to give the notice. Party number two, which is to be your principal, that is the data subject whose personal data you're processing, and he or she will have to give their consent. So the law requires consent to be documented. It requires to be affirmative. It requires it to be clear, and it should not be ambiguous. So you cannot have a situation in your privacy policy that if you want A, only if you consent for B, C, D, I will be able to process A. And that is sort of not a free way of giving consent. There is no concept of a bundled consent. And in fact, the law says consent, you could itemize it together and group them in such a way that you get an itemized consent. For example, you are applying for a bank loan through a digital lending app. But the digital lending app also wants to do some bit of a profiling of your credit history so that they can start selling you personal loans, they can start selling you, marketing related. They start doing a lot of marketing with your information, right? So that's beyond my purpose. And that is where they say you need to itemize consent, and only for the purpose what it is necessary, you got to process. So for me, I could opt for certain things and I could choose not to process or not to give consent for certain other things. And do you think businesses in the existing form and the way they are running it can run in the similar manner in future? The answer is no. This requires a fundamental rethinking of how personal data is captured, consented, and how they're processed.
Okay, so then this sounds fairly simple. Then where do you think businesses fail?
This is one part of the story. The second part of the story is the law also gives the power for the individual to take back the consent.
Oh, the withdrawal.
The withdrawal portion.
Right.
And when you withdraw the consent, question is all your systems should be sufficiently updated that this person's consent is withdrawn, so no longer should you be reaching to that person. Remember, withdrawal is not deletion. I could withdraw my consent, but I could still be okay with my data being with you, right? And certain times I can withdraw the consent, but I need not delete the data. Why? Because if you're a bank, if you're an organization where you are backed by regulatory requirement, you need to keep the personal data for a longer period. For example, the banks may have certain additional requirements. The insurance companies or the stock brokers may have some additional requirements. But you can still opt out of, take back your consent saying that, hey, I'm okay with whatever you've done. Don't process my personal data anymore going forward. And systems have to be built in such a way that these opt-out requests are processed adequately. So it is going to be an interesting challenge. The whole of the consent world is going to be changed. And yes, let's see how that actually takes place.
Oh, that was insightful, Nara. So it is time that businesses look into their consent form. So in this episode, we covered everything under the consent forms under the DPDP law. In the next episode, we will be diving deeper. Stay tuned with us on DPDP Decoded.